It's no secret that I'm a big fan of Newt Gingrich. He served as Speaker of the House of Representatives from 1995 to 99. He's known as the chief architect of the Republicans' contract with America. Like many of us, he respected the will of the voter and the American people who wanted a president who will not just upset the apple cart. That's the understatement of the century. This guy is pushing the apple cart over the cliff. Every day it seems to be getting better and better with the executive orders, with the, yes, I'll say it, temperament of our newly elected commander-in-chief. And I can't think of a better person to talk about the first few days of the Trump presidency with, and to get a preview of this meeting with congressional Republicans in Philadelphia today than the one and only Newt Gingrich. Mr. Speaker, how you been, sir?
Well, I've been doing well, and like you, I have been just amazed at everything that's going on and at the intensity and the drive and the courage that Trump shows. I
haven't gotten this kind of joy from my audience since I started. I've never heard so much ecstasy and optimism and enthusiasm from listeners in my life, Newt.
Well, I think that, look, there's an awful lot for them to be happy about.
Yeah.
The fact is that you've got a president who has kept his word. I've done a series of speeches at the Heritage Foundation outlining Trump and Trumpism, and the one I did yesterday was really outlining the inaugural and putting it in historic context. And the fact is, Trump went out and kept his word. The inaugural is actually, a repetition in many ways of his earlier commitments in the campaign, and he does it in a way that makes clear he is going to take on the Washington establishment, and he is not afraid to take it on. And that's, I think, just tremendously helpful and healthy for the country. I'm
going to be at something called the NRB, the National Religious Broadcasters Association, meeting in a few weeks in Orlando, and I'm going to be on a panel with the topic, what it means to be a Christian and a Trump supporter. You and Callista are people of deep faith. Can you give me some talking points? Because I'll cheat and I'll borrow from you.
Well, first of all, I think the whole concept is an interesting question. To even ask why it would be a question. Now, this was the one candidate who campaigned last year on defending Christians from the Islamic extremist efforts to literally wipe them out. This is a man who has just imposed a dramatically expanded Mexico City policy protecting life and refusing to use U.S. money to fund abortions. This is somebody who has already proposed repealing the Lyndon Johnson Amendment, which has the IRS watching churches, an amendment, by the way, which only ever applied to white conservative churches. It did not apply to liberal churches, never applied to African-American churches. But conservative pastors were genuinely frightened that if they gave their opinion, that they would face an IRS audit and the loss of their status.
The easiest answer for me, I'm going to be in Washington, D.C. tomorrow covering the March for Life and broadcasting from the annual March for Life with hundreds of thousands of people who are fighting for the unborn and the sanctity of life. This is a pro-life president, and to me, it's a no-brainer as a Christian, as somebody who believes in the sanctity of life strongly. You had a very easy choice, and for many of us, it all begins and ends with the issue of life.
Well, I think that that's an area where you put your finger on it. There's no question that in terms of the values that you and I would associate with Christianity, that Trump is really aggressively pursuing an agenda which should make most Christians very, very happy.
Sure. Let's talk a little bit about this congressional huddle today, the GOP retreat in Philadelphia. You've suggested that President Trump is going to focus, at least the headlines say that you say it's going to be a populist agenda. Can you get into that populism of Donald Trump and how that plays with Republicans on Capitol Hill?
Well, okay, I think a lot of Republicans are still trying to get their arms around what is Trumpism and what is Trump really all about and what does all this stuff mean. But I think Trump has a pretty straightforward model, and that people never really focused on the fact that he was not in real estate as a finance guy. He wasn't one of those Wall Street guys that moved numbers.
Mm-hmm.
He was somebody who very methodically and very systematically built buildings, which meant he spent a lot of his time with blue-collar workers. He also ran casinos, for example, in Atlantic City that appealed very much to middle-class people coming down from New York and New Jersey and what have you. So this is a guy he's not like a Wall Street billionaire liberal. He has a really deep sense of what the American people care about.
Mm-hmm.
That's why if you watch him, he knows that the number one goal, other than being safe, the number one goal is jobs. So, and watch how aggressively he's been pursuing specific CEOs, talking about it. Ford just yesterday announced a second commitment to invest in the United States. And, he's got a pretty straightforward game plan, which is he's going to change the regulation structure. He wants to eliminate 75% of all regulations. He's going to change the tax structure to favor work and production and investment so that we create jobs again. He's going to change the trade laws so that we encourage growing jobs in America. I mean, all these pieces are coming together in a way that I think make Trump pretty remarkable.
Sure.
And he understands that it resonates with normal, everyday Americans.
Mr. Speaker, I've got a pretty good sense of what listeners and Americans are feeling through this show, and this issue of voter fraud has resonated with Americans. Americans, of course, we believe in one person, one vote. Trump has made this obviously a big issue in the last few days. Often, when he raises an issue like this, some people say, wait a minute, why is he doing this? There's usually a method to it. There's usually a reason. What's your take on this whole debate about voter fraud in America that has been, that he's been pounding away at?
Well, look, this is an issue I've been involved with off and on for 30 years. The fact is that we have a 2.5, and he discussed all this, by the way, in his October speech in Gettysburg. Mm-hmm. I mean, so this is not something new. And he said then, look, when you talk about corruption in the system, remember that there are 2.4 million dead people who are still in the voter rolls.
Right.
There are people we know specifically, people who voted who are already dead. We know of people who voted multiple times. And of course the left will come in and say, well, it's not statistically significant. Well, I take the view if an honest, living, legal American has their vote crossed off by either a dead person or somebody who's not a citizen.
Right.
There's something wrong with that model. But if you'll notice, the Democrats are desperate to sustain the ability to have people vote without an identity. And I think it's because they're not sure that they can ever win if it's a purely honest election among people who are legally allowed to vote.
Whole bunch of liberal mayors are pushing back against President Trump's promise to withhold federal funds from sanctuary cities. Weigh in on that, Newt.
Well, I think this is probably the best issue for him to slow down and really focus the country's attention. I mean, you're Rahm Emanuel. You're the mayor of Chicago. You had 4,000 people shot last year. You don't think there are enough criminals on the street? So Trump has come in and said, what we want to do is go back to the system we used to have where the federal government is sitting in the jail. When you get out of the Chicago jail, if you're illegal, you get on a bus, you leave America, you never see the street. We reduce the danger by the fact that you're gone. Rahm Emanuel's position, no, you can't have the feds come in and do that. We're going to protect people who are here illegally. Well, if you have 4,000 people shot, do you really need a few more hanging out shooting people?
You know how bad it? You want to know how bad it is? Last night, 6 people were shot in Chicago during a vigil for a gunshot victim. That's how bad. I mean, I'm not kidding you. This is what's actually going on in Chicago. Happened at a restaurant in the greater Grand Crossing neighborhood. People were gathered to mourn the death of a 20-year-old who was shot and killed on Monday. A 12-year-old girl was among the 6 people shot at the vigil for the guy who was killed Monday.
Right.
This is it's insane.
And I think Trump is the first national leader to move in this. Somebody sent me a note pointing out that when Al Capone's reign of terror led to 300 people being killed in Chicago,
right.
The president intervened, and the U.S. government sent Elliot Ness out there, and that was in response to the level of violence going on in Chicago. Yeah. Well, so here are mayors who are saying, we want to protect the right of illegal criminals to stay in our city. Now, ask yourself, How can that possibly make any sense?
It does not. It does not. And this is a president who seems to get it and is giving the American people exactly delivering what we expect. Newt Gingrich, keep fighting the good fight. I look forward to seeing you. I'll be in Washington tomorrow for the March for Life, and give my best to Callisto, okay?
I'll do it.
Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it, Mr. Speaker. 800-655-MIKE.